Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Double Feature Podcast. You're going to be listening to something a little bit different today because it is not just a double feature. It is actually our end of the year roundup.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no double feature technically if we want to.
Yeah. If you want to
split hairs,
if you want to be a Debbie Downer. So yeah, this is actually our end of the year roundup because we've been doing this for actually 6 months now.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about that. You know, when we started, it was just like a thing that we were doing because we were bored during the middle of the pandemic. But you know, it's kind of morphed at least into something that we've enjoyed enough. You know, kind of found some sort of. It's been a little bit of I've learned a lot along the way. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, this has been a feeling out process for how to do a podcast, how to actually do a film podcast, and kind of what we should be looking for the films we watch, what we like about them, things like that. And that's kind of why we are doing this little end of the year roundup. So we're going to do this in 2 parts. This is going to be the best part. What we liked about the year, what we thought worked well, and the good. And then we're going to get to the bad stuff.
Yeah, you know, there's going to be some Oscars, there's going to be some Razzies.
Yeah.
But no need to think about the bad tonight. We're only going to be thinking about the good. The rules here. It's just like award show style. We've narrowed down some categories that Dean and I want to talk about specifically, and we're going to end up choosing, you know, the cream of the crop in that category, of which we will find some way to make sense of that.
Just a little bit.
In the near future. And along the way, you can scream into your podcast player and say that we're idiots if we choose the wrong thing.
But on the note of choosing the wrong thing, let's get started by talking about the things that we thought worked really well. We're going to get started by the namesake of the show. What was the best double feature we had all year?
Yeah.
And David, we got 4 here that you, me, some of our lovely listeners chimed in about what the best double features of the year were. Why don't you list them off for us?
Right. So certainly one of our favorites this year has been Time Bandits and 12 Monkeys. We have the first episode ever, Back to the Future and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Mm-hmm.
We had one of our favorite Halloween episodes, Reanimator and Color Out of Space. And then finally, a really good, iconic double feature in that of Little Shop of Horrors and Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes, we have those 4. And let's kind of talk a little bit about each one, you know, give each their due. And why did we like them? Why did these kind of make the cut as the top 4? And then we'll pick a best one.
Right.
So, Time Bandits and 12 Monkeys. Why did we like this one?
You know, this one for me was really... this was, I think, where we started to nail down... speaking of from it, not from the merit of the 2 films. This is, for me, a conversation we had that really started to nail down what we were looking for when doing this show, and the journey to look at this director, Gilliam, and his themes and his work as an auteur really was an enjoyable conversation. But on top of this, I think these 2 films are really iconic pieces from Gilliam's catalog because there's certainly more famous things like Brazil, The Zero Theorem, I think, is a notable one, or the recent The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. Mm-hmm. On top of any of the Python films, it's like there are certainly more iconic ones, maybe, but 12 Monkeys is a certifiable masterpiece.
Yeah.
And Time Bandits was kind of this surprise, though it's his most commercial film.
It's definitely in the ballpark of commercial Terry Gilliam movies.
It also has some of these elements to his filmmaking that thematically cross over to 12 Monkeys and kind of create this dichotomy between an innocent world and a world that is devoid of innocence.
Man, honestly, thinking back on it, all I can remember, the best part about that episode was us just talking about Time Bandits and kids movies for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'll agree with you. The themes in those movies are great. there's a whole thing about the fantasy world, the joy. Um, Terry Gilliam's trying to really play on that whole whimsy in childhood and the fantasy life and never give up on that even if you grow old. And then you also have 12 Monkeys, which is a whole other can of worms. I think you're right. It's a certifiable masterpiece. It's a great film. And I think the best part about that episode, honestly, was I think that's where we finally figured out what we really wanted to do with the podcast was instead of us really looking for the best pair or the best one of the two, it was well, we found a great pair of films, and that's kind of what the double feature kind of started at, and then it kind of didn't make it there, and then we kind of turned back to it.
Yeah, and while I don't think these are probably the most parable of Gilliam's catalog, I certainly think that you could probably, if you wanted to, dissect that a little more. These were really more our favorite picks of his.
Yeah, my family's big on Terry Gilliam, so these were the two that I kind of liked the most from when I was younger.
Yeah, and so I think that was one of my favorites. The next one on the list, Back to the Future and Raiders of the Lost Ark. First episode, but certainly an iconic pairing.
Oh yeah, that one was really fun because I remember you asked, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Sure." I thought we'd get 2 or 3 episodes in, and then school or 2020 would kind of just push that out of the way. But after we did Back to the Future and Raiders, I was like, "This is awesome. This is great." Because Back to the Future is my favorite film all time. Raiders of the Lost Ark is an amazing film, and we got kind of a lot out of those movies.
Yeah.
Because we talked a lot about the performances, we talked a lot about the stories, and I think the best part about that film pairing for me was that they worked so well together for being so different because they're both different kind of movies. They're just genre films. One's a sci-fi comedy, one's just a straight action adventure film, period action adventure film, but you get my drift. But they work so well because they're from like the same time period. They're both like that blockbuster era of the 80s. And I think they work perfectly together.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's true. Both of them exemplified a very particular, like we were saying in the name of the episode, they're the two of the biggest blockbusters ever. And I think that if you're ever trying to sit down and watch movies that will make you love movies, that'll make you love getting a bucket of popcorn and sitting down to watch something for 2 hours at a time, these are the two movies that'll do it, I mean, you can't get much more, in the words of, again, that have passed in 2020, can't get much more theme parky when it comes to a blockbuster than these two movies. And
it's true.
I just think, like, aside from everything else, looking back on it, these two are just like buckets and buckets of fun.
Oh yeah, I don't think we've had another fun pairing until we got to Die Hard and Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you can listen to it now on the Double Feature podcast. There's my shameless plug for the show you're already listening to.
Exactly.
But another pairing that we got, this is kind of a sleeper hit for us. This was one that kind of came out of nowhere when we were looking back at some of the episodes, but we both agreed upon it that this was one of the most in-depth conversations we had on the podcast, one that talked a lot about themes, story, structure. And also kind of just weird gore effects. That was Reanimator and Color Out of Space.
Yeah, this was kind of a surprise for me because Reanimator I'd never heard of, let alone seen before that episode. But Color Out of Space I had heard of, and I'd been kind of excited for it. And then by the time of the end of the episode, Reanimator was my favorite of the pairing. I mean, it was completely surprising. It was perfect for Halloween because Reanimator just made me. I keep saying it, but it made me squirm. Like,
you've been squirming for like weeks after.
Yeah, it's a legitimately good horror movie. On top of the fact that Color Out of Space, in its own right, while it's a much more modern horror movie, its idea and true to the Lovecraftian subject matter its purpose isn't supposed to scare you outright in the moment. It's supposed to be a slow burn. It's supposed to be kind of terrifying, but in a different place, other than like just in your bones. But on top of everything else, it's a fantastic piece of Richard Stanley, which I now respect a lot because that movie, looking back on it, in the moment it has its obvious issues, but at the same time, looking back on it now, I appreciate the good bits of it much more.
It's interesting. Color Out of Space is one of those films where on the first viewing, it's good, it's serviceable. There's some issues, and then on the second viewing, it's like, okay, this has got a little bit more under the surface. It ages. It ages really well. It stands up to repeat viewings. It stands up to, like, this kind of retrospective. And I think that's kind of why this episode holds up, where the more, I guess, far away we get from that episode and that show, the more that double feature just kind of holds up really well.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then we have our final double feature. And this one was my pick, and honestly, it was just because both the films were super fun. There was not a whole lot of reasoning behind it other than, honestly, I really like musicals. And that was Little Shop of Horrors and Rocky Horror Picture Shows.
Yeah, and this one is probably as close to an actual, like, famous double feature as we're ever going to get, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe other than testing other ones that we find, but like this one I've actually seen on marquees, and for a reason, these are two very similar films in certain ways. Where Rocky Horror Picture Show is trying to be different than everything. Yes. Little Shop of Horror is a much more commercial film that still banks on it being a weird musical, and weird musical is just kind of like the thing here. It's like if you want to come together to have a really good spooky kind of time with these, while wearing a clown nose, I think these are your picks.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing about that episode for me was it was just fun. It was just fun. I think that one was one of my favorite viewing experiences because both the movies were great. I think we had a lot of fun talking about them. And it was kind of a light episode, I'll say, but honestly, man, I kind of want to go back and watch those films again. Those are probably one of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, I'll say, was one of the few films I watched after the podcast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but those are our 4 picks and our little nuggets of information on them. But David, which one was the best double feature of the year?
Yeah, see, that's where it comes down to, right? I'm going to have to put my pick in as... that's tough. Tough choices here.
We got some bangers here.
Time Bandits and 12 Monkeys.
Time Bandits and 12 Monkeys. Oh, thank God. I was over here being like, please say Time Bandits and 12 Monkeys, because I think, don't get me wrong, Back to the Future, Raiders, great pairing. Little Shop of Horrors, Rocky Horror Picture Show, super fun. But it's like, this is really a fight between Time Bandits, 12 Monkeys, and Reanimator Color Out of Space. That's what this fight is.
And I think this is Oscar bait a little bit here, so to speak, because I really just think it ends up being our favorite. It's not like the objective favorite.
Yeah.
And we'll get to some more objective decisions later in the show, but
we wanted to start with the emotional pick
we're gonna give it to us because
this
is our fucking show, guys. And
yeah, this is the one we had the most fun with.
Yeah, and it's certainly at least the one too that I've ended up feeling at the end of it that like I was like really glad I had witnessed both of these movies together in a pairing, and for the reasons that we were doing it. So, yeah, I would say this is a good pick.
Yeah, honestly, if you could go back and if you went back and you needed to rewatch any of our episodes or even rewatch our double feature picks, Time Bandits, 12 Monkeys, can't go wrong. Can't go wrong.
And you know where else you can't go wrong?
Our next category?
Yes, finding a good actress with the Best Actress category.
Yes.
Who do we have?
Well, first we have one Miss Shelley Duvall from The Shining, iconic performance. Stanley Kubrick drove Shelley Duvall insane to get that actual display of just horror, terror, just exhaustion for the whole situation. Iconic performance.
Hmm.
And after that, who do we have?
Natalia Dyer from Yes God Yes. A kind of a surprise choice, but nonetheless a very enjoyable one.
That's actually probably the newest film on our list because that was the only one that came out this year, I believe.
There were a couple that came out this year on the docket, such as The Five Bloods was another.
Oh, The Five Bloods is also on there.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to The Five Bloods.
Oh yeah.
And who do we have after that one?
Jean Arthur, who played Saunders from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, was a very enjoyable kind of cross between a flapper and maybe a more modern, cynical take on the role of a political analyst or something, or, a political figure in Washington.
It was very interesting. We also have Susan Sarandon,
Yes.
who she had 2 appearances this year, didn't she?
Yes, one you didn't like at all in
Yeah.
the form of Bull Durham, but at the same time, Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's iconic.
Yeah, damn it, Janet. We love you, Susan.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where we get into the objective look at great actors.
Yeah.
And the actresses we have here, we have Shelley Duvall, Natalia Dyer, we have Jean Arthur, we have Susan Sarandon, and this kind of encapsulates a broad spectrum of performance here. And now we have to figure out which one is actually the best performance, or at least the one we liked the most. Because let's be honest, we're not really qualified to say what's the best, but we know which one we like the most.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fairly easy to choose for the both of us.
Mm.
Going down the list, certainly. I mean, the first one that I think maybe this is a process of elimination to the obvious choice, right?
Yeah.
Jean Arthur was a nod because while she was an energy in that movie that needed to be there, but even still kind of stereotypical in a way. A very good foil to the main character, but
played by Mr. Jimmy Stewart.
Right, and at the end of the day, though, I still believe that there are other performances on this list that go above and beyond the Call of Duty. Natalia Dyer was an interesting choice because I didn't think you actually liked it that much.
Honestly, so Yes God Yes was one of our earlier episodes, and maybe not early. It was
midway through the run. Yeah.
It was midway through the run of the year, and Yes God Yes was paired up with Juno, and we'll get to Juno in another time. Spoiler alert. But I thought Natalia Dyer was the best part of Yes God Yes.
Okay.
She gave in a very good performance. I felt sympathetic to her. Granted, I thought the concept of the film was a little suspect, but then it was like, oh, it's a period piece, different times, different place. All these other things about the movie, and it's one of those things where the movie is a B+ movie, A movie, A- movie. It's a good movie. It's not perfect or masterpiece. Yeah. It's a very good movie, and the best part was Natalia Dyer. I thought she was fantastic in her role.
Yeah, I loved the kind of, it's not dark comedy per se, but it's very kind of deadpan, I think, in a way, and she does a really good job at delivering it in that sense. And then there's obviously the 2 heavy hitters on this list.
Yes, the seasoned actresses.
Now, I kind of believe that Susan Sarandon in Rocky Horror Picture Show, while being in a heavy hitter movie, is also, though I will give her that she's an incredible singer in that movie, and it has her moments with the animation and the energy. Still, I feel like that movie, everything is overshadowed by Tim Curry, so it's like...
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's not even a gripe at Susan Sarandon, because she's also the only actress here who's pulled double billing here.
Yeah.
Granted, Bull Durham, You know,
Dean has different opinions.
I get
about
different
that,
opinions on
which
that one.
I don't particularly share. So
It's fine, you know, different strokes for different folks. But I think her performance in Rocky Horror, which is what she was nominated for this, is solid. I think she turns a serviceable performance. I think it's a very good performance. I think it's fun. You can tell she's having a blast doing it. Her solo song, "Touch Me," is awesome. It's just a lot of fun. But it's true. She is one of those actresses in the film that gets overshadowed by the raw charisma that is Tim Curry in Drag.
Yeah, the absolutely legendary role of Dr. Frankenfurter.
But that only leaves one. The queen of the double feature. Miss Shelley Duvall, who turned in probably one of the best performances of her career in The Shining. That was not understood on its release. She received a Razzie for her performance. Sacrilege. For The Shining. Arguably a master. Or actually, it is a masterpiece. I don't want to say it is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
One of Stanley Kubrick's okay movies is a goddamn masterpiece. All right, that period. And Shelley Duvall is a linchpin of that film. Or her playing across from Jack Nicholson, and everything about her performance in that movie just screams, I am a woman in a abusive marriage, but I'm sticking together for my son. And she just exudes that in every scene she's in.
Yeah, and despite the controversy that is apparent of the method in which some things were directed upon her, I think she takes it and creates this energy in that film that parallels the audience's raw fear of such a raw situation. So there's nothing really more to say about it. I really do think that cut and dry, our winner of the Best Actress category is Shelley Duvall.
Clap, clap, clap for Miss Shelley Duvall.
Yes, play the exit music. She's already had too much time on stage.
Jeez, Stanley, calm down. But next, that leads us into our Best Actor category. And our Best Actor category, sorry for the ladies in the audience, but we had 4 picks for our Best Actress, we have 6 for our Best Actor, and that's not an offense to any of the women of the audience, it's just...
Yeah, there was just a lot, there was a lot as far as the Best Actor category had to offer, and, I think, let's list the names.
And you'll understand why.
And then, we'll get into the discussion afterward.
We're going to start with one of the actor that, when we were making this list, was on the list first and foremost. As soon as we realized we were going to make this episode, he was already slammed down. And that is Delroy Lindo for Da 5 Bloods.
Just a whoa performance!
Oh my God, he is a master.
It doesn't get you at first. So if you haven't remembered, because this was one of our very first episodes.
Yeah, I believe it was our first director's episode. It was Da 5 Bloods and Do the Right Thing. That was the Spike Lee episode.
Exactly, and this is a character who's MAGA country Trump supporter, but also a Vietnam veteran.
Mm-hmm. He's African American. He's very proud of his heritage, and
it's a very you don't see this character very much.
Yeah,
and it's an interesting choice on the part of Lee, because I don't think it's any surprise that Spike Lee's probably anti-Trump all the way.
I'd be willing to put those words in his mouth, yes.
Yeah, and, whether or not that is your political opinion or not, I think it's an interesting choice for him to still tackle that section of the population in this movie, which is kind of separate. Like, the story is technically separate at all from that.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about this a bit in the episode, too, that this character is one of the only real portrayals I've seen of such a character.
Yeah, he's also one of the best portrayals of, like, PTSD in a film that feels real and not the Rambo version of PTSD.
And they do a fantastic job of deconstructing this kind of like, I say vilified in the sense that is what it seems to be in pop culture.
Mm.
And like taken to like a psychological level that completely breaks down the entirety of the character, from this sort of stereotype to a very deep and complex human psyche.
We understand why he's made every decision, every wrong decision, and every good decision up to that point in his life in that movie, based on the 3 hours he's on screen.
And it just keeps going deeper into this heart of darkness.
And that's also the other point, is we had our opinions on Da 5 Bloods. Don't get me wrong, Spike Lee, you're a good director. I think Do the Right Thing has solidified... Do the Right Thing was one of your earliest films, and it has solidified you as one of the most interesting directors for like decades beyond that.
Yeah.
I think The Black Klansman was a fantastic film. And honestly, I'm still like okay with your remake of Old Boy. I think your ending's really good. The rest of the movie, we can talk, Spike. But
yeah.
Da 5 Bloods wasn't, an amazing film when we talked about it. Do the Right Thing definitely won that double feature. But Delroy Lindo, you carried that movie on your back and you made it great every time you were given time to shine.
Yeah.
And then we got to move on a little bit. We got to stop gushing on this one, because we got somebody else who would really like to gush and sing and tap dance around the floor, because it's Tim Curry in the most charismatic performance. It's Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
It's Tim Curry.
This is like... It's interesting to me because I'm not familiar much with Tim Curry's career aside from... during this era, aside from this and then Pennywise from It.
Yeah.
And
which that was a decade later.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's true. To call it an era is also stretching the timeline, but it really fascinates me to see an actor take such an odd role. Like really, when you like just look at it on paper, it's a transsexual
Transylvanian from outer space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're also a Frankenstein spoof parody thing, making a sex slave.
But like, outside of all that, even, it's an alien that's fascinated with human culture to the point that they've like weirdly emulated it and parody it for their pleasure. Very on the nose, but also super layered. And then it's like the show tunes and pageantry that comes out of this is just taken by Curry and like slam dunked into the hoop, because it's like,
it's one of those things where Tim Curry, every time he shows up, he sees that scenery and he chows down on it, and he's like, every scene I'm in, I'm the center of attention.
Yeah.
He steals every single scene he is in, and it's amazing.
It really makes me wonder, like, as an actor, you see the script for this movie, and you see the script for Rocky Horror Picture Show, you're like, what is this? And then he just, like, decides, acting being just all that's all it is, just decisions.
Mm-hmm.
He just decides to, like, I'm going to give this absolutely every piece of energy I have. Like, I feel like you can't even think of the end game for what your performance will bring you in that. Because, they weren't setting out to make, like, a box office blockbuster.
And no.
This is very obviously a movie that was meant to, at the very least, just be a parody, a rebellion against mainstream norms. And what it's become has certainly been nothing shy of iconic. I mean, to use that word again, but...
I mean, if we're talking about iconic, Tim Curry as Frankenfurter is iconic. They can never remake that movie because there ain't no way they're getting Tim Curry back in the corset.
No, and I also don't think that there's no way you can remake the movie, because it's like, it's exemplar for it's a particular time period. What more could you do to it?
It's true.
It's campy beyond camp.
And honestly, talking about campy movies beyond camp, let's talk about something that's a little bit on a darker turn.
Yeah.
Instead of that horror show, let's talk about a different kind of shambling, brain dead horror of zombies with our next actor, Ken Foree from Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
And this was a very interesting choice for Best Actor. Because we talked about Dawn of the Dead, and our Dawn of the Dead, Shaun of the Dead episode had a lot of technical problems.
Yeah.
We had to re-record certain sections over. Our microphones weren't working. We had problems with the editing software. Give you a little bit of behind the scenes. But the thing that we kept along the entire line was Ken Foree is a fantastic actor in that film.
Yeah. He really is like this complex character that is given moments to shine on screen more than what the film actually deserves to have. But really, it's like there's a few scenes that stood out to me that really made me believe that he had chops beyond what it allowed. I mean, the darker scenes in the movie, like having to put his best buddy down or having to choose to let the girl go so they can stay behind because he's lost all hope. All the scenes kind of in the high rise, looking back on it, I'm like, those are super dystopian, but also so fascinating.
That is the thing. I think all of Dawn of the Dead, looking at it now, every scene in that movie is just like, it's commentating on all the hard stuff, all the crazy stuff from like 1970s America.
Yeah.
And it's so relevant in 2020.
Yeah.
It's even more relevant because now we actually have not a zombie apocalypse, but we actually have
a health crisis.
A health crisis.
A public health crisis.
That kind of resembled the early stages of a zombie apocalypse back in March. Like, let's be honest.
Or even still, I mean, looking back on this, and now at the time of recording, we're just in a couple days into, or even a day actually, into the next stay-at-home order. And what's a big problem with the whole stay-at-home order, other than like people are arguing still over whether or not we should open up and let people have their freedom, let people go to the shops and the eating areas,
and all the hoarding and all the stuff,
and and going back and hoarding and what other thing did the zombies do other than show back up to the malls?
And Ken Foree is the heart of that movie. He's the heart of that crisis in that group, in that function, and he carries the scenes he's in. And honestly, it kind of chokes me up when Peter and Roger are saying their goodbyes after Roger gets bitten and he's turning like that. They play that to the hilt, and it hurts. It's it's an amazing scene. Yeah. But sorry, Ken, we kind of have to get on because we got a lot of people. And the next person is one of our more recent episodes.
Yeah.
And he got on this list, not on the skin of his teeth, but by the edge of his sword. That is Cary Elwes from The Princess Bride.
Yeah, another iconic choice.
Yes. If we're going with iconic movies, I think we agreed that The Princess Bride is an amazing, iconic, great film. And Cary Elwes is the perfect Wesley. I think every character cast in that movie is perfect for their role.
Yeah.
We could have put everybody in here as a Best Actor, Actress nominee, and it probably would have worked.
Absolutely. And I think what really caught my... when I was thinking about why he should be on this list is a couple things, quite literally, in that, first of all, his charisma outdoes anybody on this Best Actor list. The charisma specifically. And that's...
More than Tim Curry?
More than Tim Curry, because I don't think Curry's thing is about charisma per se.
It's showmanship, is Curry.
Because he's playing a literal knight in shining armor. It's like, yeah, it has to be there, and he brings it to the table.
He is everything Errol Flynn was in 1980. Like that, like it's so crazy because Cary Elwes in that movie looks like an actor from like the 30s playing Robin Hood, and he brings the same kind of emotion, tone, but it's that like super...
It's the swashbuckling Sinbad of the 10s and 20s.
Yeah, and it's a very good, like, well studied performance, and also the stunts in the film, because he did all his own sword work, he did all of his own stunts, he acted across great actors across the board.
Very witty.
Very witty.
And you know what else that really caught me is, on top of everything else, I think I mentioned this, but the stone cold confidence that manifests in such a still performance. You know, normally you wouldn't say still performance and think good, but really it's like, there are some of those shots in that movie where I was looking at him like, he's not blinking, but it's the most handsome thing I've ever seen.
It's one of those things where it's like when he's on screen, he's holding the sword and he's staring down Prince Humperdinck, and he's like, and you're there and you're like, I'm not gay, but like, take me.
No, but it's like there was one shot in particular where he's talking to Prince Humperdinck while his body is paralyzed from I think the neck down or something like this.
Yeah, he's
looking
after he's been tortured and he can't like move anymore.
Yeah, he's looking at him from the bed, you know, just like leaned back, but like cool, calm, and collected. He literally is as still as pond water. It's fascinating.
And he gives this whole speech. He gives the to the pain speech, and you're just captivated. It's insane. It's the thing where I think his performance is on the list because when he turns it on, you can't look away from the screen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why he made this list. We're gonna go through and we're gonna say why these guys, like the big point that made all these guys work. Curry's the showmanship. Ken Foree, it's that like emotional, that rock solid emotional density. Cary Elwes is that unflinching charisma. You can't look away from him. Delroy Lindo was that deep, deep character work. And next we have Kurt Russell from The Thing as John McCready from The Thing. Kurt Russell.
Yeah, this one was another surprise for me, but even more so because when I think Kurt Russell, I don't immediately think like dark, brooding, and methodical.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie was really a showcase into why Kurt Russell needs to be given more serious roles. Because there are moments in this film that are perfectly charismatic and witty and funny, such as the "you cheating bitch" moment that is
the opening of it's so good. First thing we see is he's losing to a computer at chess, and he just pours a half glass of whiskey inside the computer, and it's so good. I love it. It's one of the best character moments in cinema.
Yeah, but on top of that too, certainly more evident in the second half of the film, but the it's like the focus on his own character is it's so fascinating, and also like awareness of the tone of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because any other character or any other actor may take that character and still maintain a level of franticness that isn't warranted, because it's every other character in that film is frantic, whereas Kurt Russell's McCready is still cool, calm, and collected in the paranoia of it all, and that creates such a separation in tone from the other characters that really highlights the dark tones in the movie, and it makes it it highlights this isolation that I thought was perfect.
I think that's a good way to put it. Like, that's the key. Kurt Russell's key in this movie, and this is like the reason Kurt Russell's perfect, is he encapsulates everything about that movie. Every emotion, every turn, every thing he does just makes the movie work better. Like, the movie's already great. The Thing is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's considered one of the best horror films. It's fantastic across the board. But, like, Kurt Russell's performance in it, just everything about the movie just gets a little bit better. Just a little bit better. Like, I think that's the thing. Kurt Russell, why he's on this list, is because he complements the film so well. Everything about his performance is perfect for that film. Everything about what he's doing just enhances everything else around it.
Yeah. And the final name to brandish the list is then the opposite actor of now one of our winners for Best Actress, Jack Nicholson, makes an appearance because
we
again,
couldn't keep him off the list.
Yeah, iconic.
Sorry.
Iconic seems to be the through line in that.
Every actor here is on an iconic bend.
Yeah, because Jack Torrance is one of the most terrifying horror movie villains,
And
but also kind of like a.
He's not, and he's barely a villain. He's just this. Well, I mean, in the book and in all that stuff, he's this kind of run down, broken, alcoholic writer who's just kind of at the end of his rope. And Jack Nicholson plays it as I'm Jack Nicholson, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah.
He already looks crazy as he's going in. And Jack Nicholson has probably the most debatable performance on this list because many people say it's a great, perfect performance because he plays the best villain for the last act of the movie. You're scared of him. He's, this terrifying presence. He's chasing his son around with the action. Jack Nicholson's going to get him. It's going to be over. Oh my God. And then there's the other spectrum where it's like, but he always feels like he's on edge. He always feels like he's about to break. And it's just, I can never get comfortable around him. And I think that's kind of why he's on this list. He is the terror of The Shining.
Yeah, and he exemplifies a certain quality of an actor of that time, where it's not that the camera needs to look at the actor, it's that you need to look at the actor, right? Mm-hmm. I think now in a lot of horror, even if it's a little bit more intellectual, we're looking at what we're looking at on the screen because the camera's pointed over there, not really like...
Your eyes aren't searching for anything.
Whereas, like, there's a certain shot in this movie where it's like a slow zoom on Jack Nicholson just, like, sitting in the living room of the house. Mm-hmm. Stoic, lost in his head. And it's just like you can't look away from it because it's so off. And it's like... Whether it's also that Kubrick is a fantastic director, mm-hmm. Or it's that Nicholson might literally be that clinically insane. It combines to make one of the most truthful performances, I think, on the list.
One of the most haunting. It's incredibly haunting performance.
Yeah.
But then I think it's time to do what we do, and we should start knocking off some of the actors and figure out which one was the best.
Yeah, if I'm to be fairly honest, the first couple that are knocked off the list for me, Ken Foree.
I can agree with that.
It's like loved it, but it was really more of like that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. It was a thing where Ken, you're a good actor, great actor, good performance, but you're iconic because you embody the role, but we're fighting with a lot of big hitters here.
Yeah, and then also Cary Elwes, it's like good, but again, perfect casting doesn't necessarily mean perfect acting for me.
Yeah.
Though again, nothing wrong with what he did.
Oh God, no! Like we will get back to Princess Bride later on. You don't have to worry.
And same rule goes for Kurt Russell.
Yeah, that's true. That's the thing. Kurt Russell, it's a thing where he enhances the film to another degree, but I don't think he pulls a lot out of. I don't know. Like, Kurt Russell is perfect for that movie, but there might be another actor who can embody that role, and probably not. But I don't know. It's another thing where it's like Cary Elwes, you're fantastic, perfect casting, but maybe not the best actor here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of would probably kick Jack Nicholson off the list next.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get quite interesting, right?
Because then we're left with Jack Nicholson, Tim Curry, and Delroy Lindo. 3 actors who... Now, Tim Curry, actual, iconic performance. Jack Nicholson, iconic actor. Delroy Lindo probably gave one of the best performances of the year in The Five Bloods.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be shy about it.
You're not going to be shy about it? Who are you knocking off next?
No, it's not a question of who I'm knocking off. It's just immediately, I think I'm jumping right to the Crown here.
You're jumping to the Crown because I think I got my pick too.
Yeah, and it's been fairly obvious from the get-go, but Delroy Lindo is
by far,
like
by far and away.
When we watched this performance initially, we both know the exact moment that we knew this performance was the best one we would see this year, and it's that monologue POV, like his face just to the camera in the forest of Vietnam. I mean, it's like,
and he lays everything out. His soul is like on display for the audience, and he is just going for it. No other person on this list gives that much of a dramatic turn. And no other person on this list made you feel as sorry and as into the character.
The spectrum of emotion that is expressed by him in this arc is fascinating. I mean, there's absolute anguish and agony. There's grandiosity. There's remorse, and you could even call it saintliness. Maybe is the word. I don't know. It's such a fascinating arc that it almost makes you wonder what would happen if he was just the main point of the movie. You know, that he stole this kind. It was what was originally supposed to be more of an ensemble thing, ends up being like this thing where I'm like, I really wish this would have just been about him.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of what we have to say about Mr. Delroy Lindo. If you wanted to see his performance, go check out Da 5 Bloods. It's on Netflix. He is the best part about that movie by far.
Hands down.
Hand to God. But speaking of hand to God, we got to go to the god of the film, the guy who actually makes all the decisions, makes all the choices, the director. And we kind of got a killer's row of directors here.
Yeah, it's again, we'll run down the list real quick and then get into this discussion. The names on the list are comprised of Rob Reiner,
who did The American President, and we discovered had one of the most insanely good streaks of his run. Also, he was the director of The Princess Bride, which another film people argue is one of the best films of all time. Very good director. Everything he did was great.
Certainly. If it wasn't for him, Princess Bride, I don't think would be what it is.
Oh, no.
John Carpenter, next.
Another two-peat director. He did Halloween, and he did The Thing.
Yeah.
And for Rob Reiner, it's pretty obvious he's here for The Princess Bride. John Carpenter was a little interesting. I think we put him in here for The Thing, but it's kind of weird because Halloween is the icon, and The Thing is arguably the better film.
I think Halloween is like is a happenstance of the project, whereas The Thing, I think, is deliberately John Carpenter's fault.
Yeah.
You know, it's absolutely his piece, whereas Halloween is more of a...
You got a small budget, you want to make a Black Christmas sequel.
And there's probably a lot more hands on that than just his at the end of the day, I believe.
Maybe. But honestly, John Carpenter's work in The Thing, The Thing is considered one of the best horror films ever made.
Certainly.
The atmosphere is on point. The tension is oozing out of that film.
Yeah, I don't think we get the visuals of the monster of The Thing quite the way they are without his particular taste and what he wanted. But the next one on the list has already won an award tonight for the best double feature, Terry Gilliam.
Yes, the man who directed our favorite films, or our favorite double feature of the year. And he's on here for Time Bandits, I believe.
I would actually say he's on here for 12 Monkeys as well.
Well, I mean, we gotta... best single film director. Well, I guess a lot of people on here are double hitters. So
you direct Brad Pitt the way you did in that movie, you're gonna get on my list. So
I gotcha.
It's pretty, that's what I gotta say about that.
But Terry Gilliam is definitely the definition of an auteur.
Certainly, and one that has a much different worldview than a lot of auteurs, or let alone a worldview, because I feel like also that auteurs sometimes don't have a defined view of the world at large. They have more a defined view of the world in their films.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Gilliam takes that a step further to say, no, my films are about the world around you, and you better notice that I have a particular belief system about it.
Yeah.
Speaking of a particular direction of an actor, we include this next name on the list because of the redemption arc, really, that culminates in one of the best Nicolas Cage movies ever.
Mr. Richard Stanley for The Color Out of Space?
Yeah, it's like, when you describe to me this story of a man cast away only to return in particularly excellent form, the story, it's almost like the story of the director here is really what grabs me.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I think we did a little video talking point about this. Richard Stanley, he was originally attached to The Island of Dr. Moreau in the 1990s, the one that had Marlon Brando, Val Kilmer, and he was pushed off the project before a lot of the film was made and became one of the worst films ever. But that kind of cast him out of Hollywood, and he hadn't made a feature-length narrative film until Color Out of Space 20-something years later. And he comes back swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
Because,
it makes you wonder why they would ever lose faith in this kind of man. I mean, it's maybe it's also an unfair comparison too, because The Island of Dr. Moreau was a much larger production than this.
Oh, much larger, yeah.
Which, even though it does a lot with the small kind of area that the film covers, is nonetheless kind of a smallish production.
Yeah. The film actually didn't have that much of a... I don't even think Color Out of Space was even half the budget of Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's kind of nice, because Richard Stanley, he's a director who's coming back on the scene, and this is his, I'm back. And you gotta get ready. Because we have, Rob Reiner, John Carpenter, Terry Gilliam, and each one of them are established, directors who know what they're doing. They know their shtick. They know exactly the kind of filmmakers they are. They're in tune with that worldview. And then Richard Stanley, I think he's in tune with what he's got. He knows what is going on, and he's ready to make his next film, which is, I believe, an adaptation of the Dunwich Horror, another Lovecraft story, and I can't wait for that to come out.
Certainly.
And we have another director here who's maybe not new, but newer than John Carpenter and Terry Gilliam.
But maybe even suffers the same redemption story arc of having created one of the most controversial films, and also then coming out with one of the most revered films of a year. This being Rian Johnson for Knives Out.
Yes, and his redemption from the Star Wars film that he directed. Well,
the Star Wars film that shall not be named.
Yeah.
You know exactly which one we're talking about. The one with the flying dead body of an actress who had already passed away.
It's a little bad taste. But, Rian Johnson, he's here for Knives Out. And Knives Out was one of our most enjoyable films.
I've since watching it last year, which it's odd to think that it's a year old now. It's become one of my top 5 favorite films of all time.
It's true. All the little things about the film, the nuance, the characters, the story, the direction itself, how the scenes lay out, are very smart. Everything seems so meticulous in the film. And I think we can owe a lot of that to Rian Johnson. It's interesting. We have two kind of opposite ends. We have Richard Stanley, who's coming in with this smaller budget art house horror film, high concept, and then we have Rian Johnson here, who is coming in with this more big budget, established genre film, but he reinvents that genre. I mean, we haven't seen the big budget, whodunit film in decades.
No, we have not.
But yeah, so that's our directors. And I think this is where we kind of gotta
this one's a little less cut and dry, right? I mean, we didn't really have like a preconceived decision on this one, whereas others we certainly did.
Yeah.
And my immediate intuition here is to knock out the two who had one film on the list.
I mean, I kind of feel that way. The issue here, so we have Richard Stanley, Ryan Johnson. They only had the one film. Everybody else had two. But the quality of Knives Out and Color Out of Space were very high.
Which is exactly the reason I'm going to say something that you're not going to like. And it's that
boy.
The first elimination I really think needs to be made off the list is John Carpenter. Because as much as I really do believe that The Thing, the monster, is such a step above a director's accomplishment of most movies on this list, because again, what he did for practical effects, but also then did for what effects could be shown on screen in that movie, was unlike anything else. And the problem being that I think Halloween's a steaming pile of garbage.
You just hate Joy.
No, I don't hate Joy. It's iconic. It's a gem of its genre. But also, if I really look at it with objective eyes, I'm like, this movie is not made very well.
It hasn't aged beautifully in the 40 years it's been out.
Yeah, so
I'll give you that. It's a very 70s slasher flick.
We might have a different conversation when it comes to getting to all the escape films and other films in John Carpenter's catalog, but for now, I think there's a couple other directors on the list that deserve a little bit more praise.
I'll concede John Carpenter, but I think we should probably move to Terry Gilliam being knocked off.
Oh, okay.
Now, just to throw it in here. Now, we're even saying, we're not... Terry Gilliam was a hard pick because it's the culmination of he's a very auteur director. It's our favorite double feature. Time Bandits was a great film, kids movie, and 12 Monkeys, great performances, high concept. But overall, if we looked at each one of those films by themselves, I think Time Bandits has its issues.
That's certainly true, yeah.
And 12 Monkeys, I think 12 Monkeys also has issues as well. I think it's the thing where you were clouded by the power that is Brad Pitt's acting. Because, there's some design choices and things within 12 Monkeys that are sus. A little sus, to say the least.
Yeah.
Time Bandits, there's a few things in there that are a little very indulgent for the director. And I think that's the thing. Don't get me wrong, Terry Gilliam's a fantastic director.
Yeah.
But we have here Rob Reiner for Princess Bride, Richard Stanley for Color Out of Space, and Ryan Johnson for Knives Out. And then we have Terry Gilliam, and we can't even decide which one of his films he should be nominated for.
Yeah. And that's a fair assumption. If I'm going to even go even further into now talking about how the writers, the directors having like a hand in writing their films.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, if I'm going to then knock somebody else off almost immediately, you'd think that The American President would be the one where I'm like, well, frankly, it's a fairly by the books film.
Yes.
Aside from its premise, there's nothing extraordinary about it.
It's true. And it's which is weird because it's an Aaron Sorkin script.
Yeah. But I think, like we determined, it's pretty much a romantic comedy at the end of the day with national proportions. But however, The Princess Bride is such a, again...
Iconic. Your favorite word of the day.
It's such a tour de force of... I don't know. It's kind of like how Time Bandits has this quality of being a kids movie that is fantastically above its level.
Mm.
Same thing with Princess Bride. But I still also think that William Goldman has something to do with this.
That's a big part of the Rob Reiner formula there, where we have William Goldman, who arguably that script is untouchable for Princess Bride.
Yeah.
It's fantastic across the board. And it almost feels like if they had a that you could have given that script to a couple of different directors, and you probably would have gotten maybe not the exact same film, but you would have gotten a very, very good film out of it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Rob Reiner, you have a very unique touch to your films. You have a very good eye. But don't get me wrong, Princess Bride is going to get its due. It's still coming.
Certainly.
But maybe not the best directed, maybe not the best director of the pieces we have here.
Yeah, and it's funny because now we've knocked off all three that have made 2 films on the list.
Which is kind of strange because we started off wanting to knock off the ones and dones, but when we looked at the quality of each effort,
it does come down to the quality because again, I think Color Out of Space is a fantastic return to a form for a director, quite literally laughed out of Hollywood. Just as well as Knives Out is a proof of form in the form of a director who had certainly pieces before this in the form of Brick is the film, if I'm correct.
I thought so.
And it has, I think it's Mark Ruffalo and
but yeah, Ryan,
it's like Brothers something.
A Brothers Keeper. Is that it?
No, it's...
Well, besides the point. So, that's the thing. Richard Stanley had been laughed out of Hollywood. Basically left, and he came back with a film arguably didn't blow up the box office, but it's a fantastic display of what a director can do for his films.
Brothers Bloom.
Brothers Bloom.
Oh, and Looper, by the way.
And Looper.
For God's sakes.
There you go. And then we have Rian Johnson, who never, once he got into Hollywood, he was in Hollywood, pretty consistent career. Then he made the Star Wars film, and everybody's like, okay, you're just kind of this high concept schmuck who just makes studio movies. And then he makes Knives Out, which is it's just so smart, funny, clever, across the board. And that's what we have here. We have to decide which one of these directors is the best director for the films they were given. And Rob Reiner, he was knocked out because he was a great director, but that film was going to be great no matter who they gave it to. John Carpenter, The Thing, fantastic film, but a step above what he had done, but maybe not a step above of everything else in the oeuvre of that genre. And then we have Terry Gilliam, who the picks that he was given, they had their faults. He was there because his auteur's vision was so strong. And now we have to decide here. We have Richard Stanley, who's on the more auteur, low-end indie side of the spectrum, and then we have Rian Johnson on that big budget. A studio finally gave me a lot of money to just have fun with all these actors. Where are we going with this one, David? Because this is kind of a coin flip for me.
I think there's one thing that ends up standing out for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to do again one quick check to make sure that my opinion is not clouded by a poor memory, but the script for Color Out of Space, if I'm correct, is still property of Richard Stanley, yes. Okay, so then this actually solidifies my point.
Yes.
If I have to come down to it, it's a writer-director duo.
Yes.
That we have here in the finals.
Both of them wrote their stories. Both of them, are directing their things. And before you say Stanley's film is based on its, a concept.
No, I actually don't even think that's what I would boil it down to, because there's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with adaptations. In fact, some of the greatest films of all time come from adaptations, a la films like Barry Lyndon,
The Godfather.
Yeah, Forrest Gump, it comes from a book. Jaws technically comes from a book.
Yeah.
And, for me, it's that I feel still Color Out of Space is still not as good of a script as Knives Out. So if I had to boil it down to it, Knives Out is such a well-oiled machine, directed by such a well-oiled director at this point, that would be my choice.
Honestly, I would fight you, but I feel even if I did, it would just reinforce your point. Rian Johnson, you won Best Director for the Double Feature Film Club. Or Double Feature Film Podcast, whatever. But yeah, Richard Stanley was damn close there. All I'm saying.
We'll see what happens next for him. I mean, I do think too that part of me was just a little bit dazzled by all those pretty colors.
It's such a good looking movie.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's granted, if this is what Richard Stanley comes back with, I can't wait to see what he comes out with next.
Yeah, certainly.
And that kind of leads us to our final category here, the end all be all, the one you've all probably been waiting for, where we were finally going to talk about all these movies, our best film category. This is not our best double feature. This is the best stand-alone film that we watched this year. The one we had the most enjoyment, the one we thought had the most quality, that we had in a single viewing. And first up on this list is Knives Out. And Knives Out was paired with Murder by Death, a pairing that was not the best pairing because I think we both misinterpreted what the other film was when we matched them. But as we said before, Knives Out, incredibly tight script, great direction,
ensemble
cast, everything comes together very well, well-oiled machine. And then next we have Back to the Future.
Yes.
Which, my favorite film of all time. This had to go on my list.
Yeah, it's another one where from beginning to end, the script to the production, even some of the editing choices, I mean, are all impressive for a blockbuster movie at the time of its release. That has been a lasting icon in film memory. And if we're speaking again about lasting icons, The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Arguably, you can say I'm just, you know what, I'm going to be a little sexist right now. If you're a girl and you live in America, your favorite movie, or one of your favorite movies, is probably Princess Bride. Period, full stop. I'm willing to stake my claim on that. Because I've yet to meet a single woman in my entire life, or friend.
Dean, you're a girl. I don't know what
you're talking. Who told you? Oh.
Yeah, this has all been an act.
This has all been an act, I know. But yeah, this is one of the most quintessential, fantasy movies for, if you're young or whatever. It is, everybody knows Princess Bride.
Yeah, it's odd how much this film has permeated culture, but it really is. This film takes, the absolute fundamentals of storytelling and the traditions and the more modern contemporary uses of parody, the uses of legend and fairy tale. It all comes together on top of a cast that does not quit. Every facet.
Everybody in this cast is fantastic.
And a director who brought it all together to make something that absolutely has its tone and quality is perfect for what it is. And I mean, all around the execution here is immaculate.
Speaking of immaculate execution, ensemble cast, perfect atmosphere, we have The Thing.
Yeah.
Which, I think that's a great way to put it. The atmosphere in that film, palatable. The tension, perfect. The ensemble cast, everyone knows their role. Everybody plays their part. And it all works. At the end of the day, everything about that movie just works. It's a workhorse film.
Yeah, and from beginning to end, it does keep you on the treadmill, sweating and anxious. Because this had one of my favorite endings of the bunch. Mm-hmm. Just that cut to black after we're unsure whether the horror has ended or not.
And they're staring at each other. It's cold. They're the base around him is on fire and the fire's going out. And they're like, well, if one of us is a thing, the other one can't do anything to stop it. Well, I guess we're just going to sit here and see how the night goes. Obviously, they're going to both freeze to death. Or one of them might. The other one, if they're the thing, we don't know. It's such... Oh, that ending is just beautiful. It's so good.
Certainly. I don't know. And I think obviously, I made a note about Knives Out earlier that it's a well-oiled film.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Had the best director.
as much as I'd love to give this award to it, because it's, again, top 5 favorite, I can't really ignore the lasting cultural
Effect of
impact.
all the other films on this list.
Or one in particular.
We'll get to it. Don't worry. We got to give the devil its due.
Okay, we'll give it its due diligence.
Yeah, because don't get me wrong, Knives Out, well-oiled machine. But continue your point.
Yeah, so that combined with then The Thing combines to make a really interesting cross section between like horror, but also like a thriller kind of, but also kind of an action movie in certain elements. I mean, it's odd how many crossroads this comes together and kind of supersedes them to make like this high concept genre masterpiece. That even still shows a little bit of wear and tear, but I would still argue from beginning to end all the ideas are there.
Yeah, so you don't want to give the award to Knives Out, right?
Yeah.
And that's because it's going up against films that are literally iconic.
Yeah.
And it might reach that level of iconicity later on, but it needs
In
due time. And then we have The Thing where it's hits every point in its genre, and it supersedes. It makes the great genre horror film. But it's matched up against films that arguably have things that are perfect about them. We have Back to the Future and Princess Bride, 2 films that arguably are kind of perfect. Both these scripts are used in actual film schools to teach screenwriting.
Yeah.
Both of these films have pitch perfect casting. Both of these films, their stories are heartfelt, they're funny, they're exciting, and both of them, like Princess Bride has an ending that's just, it makes you all warm and fuzzy inside, and Back to the Future has an ending that makes you excited to see what other adventures are going to happen. Now we got to kind of figure out what's going on here. And I know, David, you want to just jump in and just give the crown away. But, you got to give the devil its due.
Certainly. I mean, and the due, I think, like you said, there's a lot of things to compare here when it comes to the legend of both of these films. But one thing I think, for me, for Back to the Future, that sticks out, it's that I know from the get-go, rather than focusing on the concept of the film, we're also being given a product. Mm-hmm. And while I enjoy the product from beginning to end, there's the legendary end of the film where it's the biggest sequel bait you've ever seen. Yeah. And I'm not saying that knocks a whole movie, because that would be saying that a whole other film is responsible for why I think the film doesn't deserve it. But that, frankly, it's a story of a particular time that needs a particular set of understanding to really kind of get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that The Princess Bride has this timeless, cross-cultural quality to it that would make this film stand out all over the world. And maybe that's not necessarily what always will make the best film of a bunch. But for this, I certainly think that when it comes to impact here, I am particularly focused in on it. Because of all other qualities, for the most part, are shared in all these films.
It's true. It's true. I mean, Back to the Future is my favorite film of all time. I love watching that movie. It makes me incredibly happy. It takes me back to when I was a kid. And then, it's true. It is very particular of its time. It's something that probably doesn't translate well. Or it probably still translates, but not like perfectly to other regions, other people. And the story is very good because it's this kid, he's connecting with his dad in this new way, he's seeing his parents in this new light, which is kind of a timeless thing, but it might not hit all the notes. But then we got Princess Bride, and this whole thing is, love, friendship. I think that's probably it. This year, for the Double Feature podcast, the best film we watched the entire year is The Princess Bride.
I agree.
Which is kind of rough because it was paired with Willow. And, ooh, buddy, I can't wait for us to talk about Willow.
Oh, I can't wait for us to get to that worst of episode, because it's going to be full of surprises, obvious bits. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna cry, but certainly tonight we've done nothing but rejoice in some of the best things we've experienced over this first year of the Double Feature podcast, and it certainly does nothing but get me excited for a whole nother year worth of film. Because putting together that list for the next year was like very
cathartic because we knew what we were doing,
and it really gets me into it makes me excited to learn from the next year of film, like I learned from even just this short run, which it's odd to think about, is the most movies I've probably ever watched in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it's gotten me into this habit and this mindset of watching more movies and thinking about them more. I certainly need it since I'm in that craft. So I'm very excited for what's to come, whatever the best of the next year will bring. On top of whatever the worst is, but we'll get to that, like we said, in the next week.
Honestly, I cannot wait till we get into the next year. I'm very excited.
Certainly.
But for those who are interested, our next episode our next episode of this little special, it won't be this long, I swear, guys. It's gonna be way shorter. We're gonna talk about like all the bad stuff, and we're gonna crank that out in like a solid 30 or a nice 45.
Listen, I'll shit talk as much as I want to and as long as I want to. But
God damn it.
Yeah. For now, this has been a year in review for the Double Feature podcast, and we thank you if you've joined us along so far.
Stay with us from the beginning.
Good for you. I mean, it's been tough, I'm sure, but we are certainly thankful for it. And if you're just joining along, or if you're going to be joining us in the new year, well, we are certainly excited to have you with us.
Yep. And we swear it'll get a lot better.
Certainly.
All right. David, I think that's about it here at the Double Feature.
Yeah, why don't we tell them where they can find us over the next year?
You can find us at our YouTube channel, In the Frame. That's our YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram at _podcast. You can also find us on Spotify, Anchor FM, and Google Podcast, and so on and so forth, and everywhere in between. David, what else do we have on our YouTube channel that people might listen to?
A lot of things. We have, obviously, the Double Feature podcast, which is the main series of what you're listening to right now. We have Too Obscure for TV, which is our kind of a hobbyist podcast about movies that are definitely not deserving of being anywhere near the main podcast, but we certainly want to talk about for an extended amount of time. We put out a bunch of different video essays, maybe even some narrative things. Maybe there will be a lot of different things. It's kind of a testing ground for us, but one in which we are going to get much more creative with over the next year. Mm-hmm. And aside from that,
that's everything here at the podcast I can think of. Oh, other than maybe you can listen to me more at the Film Club podcast, where I talk with my girlfriend about movies we like. It's going to be super fun.
Yes.
Also, you can check out the combining of the Double Feature podcast and the Film Club podcast.
Yes, as a part of our holiday season
kind of
programming.
Yeah, our holiday programming. We get together and talk about a bunch of our favorite holiday movies, Christmas movies, and have just a good old time. But yeah, that's about it.
Certainly. Everyone, we will see you in 2021. I'm sure January 1st, 2021 will absolutely just wipe away all of the things that have happened this year. There's no possible way in which either a clean slate can't be had in just 24 hours time.
It'll be great, guys, I swear.
Yeah.
Alright, bye, everybody. Have a good one. Peace.
Have a good day.